Hello, everyone. You're listening to the 805 Uncensored. We're a show on the Anti Capitalist Podcast Network. This podcast covers a variety of topics from music to politics, news, philosophy, and more. There are no limits, which is why we are uncensored. So, welcome and please follow us on your podcast and social media platforms of choice. This is episode number 106, and joined with us today on the show is Sad Boy. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on a podcast for the first time, kind of thing. I'm a musician, audio engineer, producer, stagehand, a bunch of different things, and I'm excited to talk about AI and the future of the music industry and overall the arts and entertainment being affected by AI in the modern capitalist hellscape that we live in.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to diving into the conversation. This is something that I've thought about a lot, especially in the past few weeks. So first off, what do you make of the current AI climate in terms of music, the job industry, kind of all encompassing? How do you feel about it?
Right. So in terms of that current climate, I'm like very much so terrified of it because people will use Chat GPT like it's Google nowadays. Like I have friends all the time that are like, "Oh, just Chat GPT it." And I'm like, there's an environmental impact to these kinds of things. It contains many issues and flaws and, like AI isn't perfect, just like I guess any bit of technology or any bit of humanity. But it's like I support things like good AI, like it can be used in amazing medical and scientific fields, and for automation that isn't like terrible and just destroying the job market. But bad AI is kind of like already being used to screw over artists, creatives, just demolishing the entirety of the job market. We see tens of thousands of job layoffs on the regular now, and the ethical concerns and implications of what the technology can do haven't really been explored or processed by the people. Like we don't know what we're doing with this Pandora's box that we are opening, and like there's lots of like implications and perspective shifts to have on how much this technology can do, and of course how much we're willing to sacrifice in terms of like our water supplies, our energy consumptions, in order to power something that a lot of things we already just have the solutions available for. They're just a little bit longer of a workaround, as opposed to just type a quick little thing into a software and into a little AI prompt box and just get an actual response out of it. It's how much you're willing to compromise like the laziness for ease of use and destruction of environment.
Sure, and we're effectively just getting glorified Google.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're using ChatGPT like Google, and I'm like, just Google it. I remember when you had to sit there and Google, and you didn't just click the first link. You'd have to sit there, go 3, 4, 5 pages into Google responses, and like
Yeah.
actually build up citations and links and do your own research kind of thing.
Yeah, and everything is so profit driven now. You can't ever get good search results. So like
Yeah,
I'll look up something and I'll find out the articles from like 2 years ago, and then I'm like, what the fuck?
yeah, or just like all the top results are just bought out and paid for,
Yeah.
and like any like reviews you look for are like paid sponsorships where they're not really truly being honest. And there's a whole thing about that with like essentially just marketing flavor text all over, specifically with audio and music production software and things like that. It's very much so like a dystopian hellscape in terms of like you can't just find the truth that easily. You really have to sit there and dig for it, and the AI doesn't make it easier because it's just trained on like the entirety of the internet without regard. And so a lot of times you will find like even just doing a Google search and that AI top response is like completely inaccurate or just
Hmm.
wrong.
Right, and it's largely driven by right wing human beings. So,
Yeah,
like
the right wing
Grok.
billionaire ruling caste that's just like just in control of all this AI, like yeah, like with Grok and how they became just essentially mega fucking Hitler almost immediately.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard this latest story about this woman said that ChatGPT told her son to send it nudes after they were talking.
What?
They had a conversation about soccer players. Like they were like, which
Mhm.
one looks better, Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi? And then he was
Ooh,
like,
I'm gonna
Ronaldo.
have to say Ronaldo myself personally on that one,
Yeah,
but
but like the conversation quickly escalated
it
into
just spiraled into that.
asking
Wow.
children to send nudes.
Yeah, and see, like, all this stuff is unregulated. There's no laws, there's no legislation, there's no repercussions.
Dude, it's
They get
literally
to operate
it's
with
literally called
impunity.
unhinged mode. It comes in Teslas.
Oh my in
It's
Tesla's
it's
cool. Oh
it's
my god.
programmed with Grok now. I just
Oh,
learned
no.
about this. This is
I saw about that because, there's a comedian and they made, like, jokes about, like, "Oh, you're gonna have essentially Hitler GPS to, like, make a what is it, turn at the Third Reich and stuff." Oh my god. Just yeah, it's actually, like, terrifying how, like, since they get to buy out all the legislation because they're the rich ruling billionaire class,
yeah.
they get to operate with impunity. And then, we just have to deal with the repercussions of all of that where, it's becoming more normalized and stuff like that, where AI can be, like a huge concern of society should at the very least be like how much the AI generation can go with actors and models and stuff like that. Like they've recently announced the first Hollywood AI generated actress.
I hate that
And
so much. I heard about that.
yeah, and it's like the deep fakes and all that, like, it becomes increasingly possible that you have to accept realities that, like, high school bullying and all that, like, school bullying, we've all had to, like, deal with it or been aware of it as we grow up and stuff like that or experience it, but now it's, like, at a new level of cyberbullying where you can very quickly, like, generate these, like, deep fakes and AIs and stuff like that. Even the government has, a contract recently, I believe the Department of Defense signed a $10 million contract with OpenAI, and it's like, okay, so
Mhm.
if the CIA can AI generate a video of me like robbing a bank, and I'm sitting there like, well, how am I going to fight that? But also, like, a high school bully can very easily just make AI generated porn of someone else, and it's like this is like very heavy stuff in terms of like what the societal impacts, the human impacts are.
Right, because it's I mean, it's been this way for a little while, but it's escalating now to the point where like reality is entirely dictated by AI,
Yeah,
and
AI psychosis is a thing.
it's being difficult to decipher what's real and what's not. And then you have AI on top of a kind of a post-truth society.
Yeah, yeah, it very much so is a post-truth, post in, like, the age of information and all that stuff, it's very much so a post-reality of that. AI psychosis is now really a thing, and a huge point of, like, the societal destabilization and destruction is a matter of, like, when it becomes so overwhelmingly impossible to sit there and discern between reality and unreality, things that aren't real, things that are fake, real news, fake news, all that stuff. It becomes a point where it's so overwhelming to everyone that people can't bother. Even the people that are most dedicated to chasing down the truth and accuracy, they are unable to keep up with it. And it just tires them and it wears down. And eventually you end up giving in. And that is when we end up in this like combination trifecta of like Fahrenheit 451, 1984, Brave New World, just all
Right.
simultaneously smashed together. And we are like at the precipice of this. We're very close to these Matrix and Terminator like scenarios. And I don't think people are doing enough to realize how much power they have to stop it and how much they're actively consuming and pushing for this.
Right. And you mentioned when we first started recording ethical AI. And that's an interesting idea because I agree. I think there is a place for that with like the medical field, with science in particular. So
Yeah.
I forgot who said it the other day, but they said, like, why is AI fucking painting? Why isn't AI cleaning the Pacific Ocean?
Exactly, and that kind of just ties into who's in charge of developing this stuff. The right wing, billionaire ruling class, like all these people that are focused more on their profits and all that. Because if they have a populace that is just only working, and then all the art is, all the things that define humanity, art, creativity, and all that stuff is led to the robots, then all the humans have left to do is things like manual labor, filling up the prison system, and and then we essentially circle back around to slavery and these kinds of concepts, and the fact that, like, the prison industrial complex is the biggest it's ever been, the military industrial complex is the biggest it's ever been, Spotify, to the point where now even your music, Spotify, by paying a Spotify monthly subscription, you are in essence funding military AI weaponry. And it's like there's no way to escape that in the world that we are in today. Like this, this end stage capitalism, there can be no ethical consumption or production. We're just kind of, every little thing in some way, shape, or another. Like the good place, like, buying a certain tomato will get you points towards going to the bad place.
Yeah.
It's very it's beyond satirical. I find it personally, the situation that we are in as a species currently, and the level of like lack of awareness and lack of understanding. But then our population literacy rates, both regular literacy and media literacy, are they're decimated. And that's kind of the point. If you have the technology that will do everything for you, you don't have to be literate. You don't have to be able to discern reality from unreality.
Hmm. Yeah. Let's talk more about music since you brought that up, because that was
Mhm.
actually the next topic that I wanted to talk about.
Right.
There's already a militarization of AI, and
Mhm.
now there's militarization of AI associated with just people that listen to music. So that's a fucked up concept in itself, right?
Right.
And then you also another thing that I wanted to bring up just now too is it goes to show just the ever pressing reality that you and I know that
Mhm.
everything is political.
Yeah,
So no
inherently.
matter no matter who you are, no matter what you think you're interested in, you think like, oh, I'm not paying attention to the election, or I'm not talking about Trump online, therefore nothing I'm engaged in is political. It's just it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, do you go to school? Do you pay taxes? Do you
Exactly.
anywhere that your money is being funneled, it's like it's likely going
It's
somewhere
inherently political.
shitty. Unfortunately, yeah, it's political. It's
Even if it's not going somewhere shitty, the fact that it's where it's going has to do with the laws that are passed, the legislation that goes through. So ultimately, and no matter what, if you are paying a tax, you are actively political because, whether you agree or disagree doesn't matter. The fact that you have an opinion on it or the fact that it's going somewhere kind of lends you into being part of that political sphere. But also, like, Americans are the most heavily propagandized populace on
yeah,
the planet. And it goes to show
Americans and
how
Israelis.
conservative. Yeah, yeah,
Same people.
yeah, yeah. That's its own whole subject. I mean, in speaking of stuff like that, and in terms of like, if we look at like software relating to music and all that, one of the
Yeah.
biggest, most popular music production software companies that make plugins is Waves. They're kind of ubiquitous. Every kind of studio you go into will have the Waves plugins on there because they created the first software equalizer, the Waves Q10, for equalizing audio inside of a computer. And they're an Israeli company. And over the last few years, you've seen they've lent very heavily into their AI based products, stuff like vocal cleanup stuff. So to remove background noise and ambience, reverb, pops and clicks and stuff like that. It's like, okay, cool. So this is an entirely Israeli based company that is developing these AI tools. We know they're taking our money for that because of our money funneling to all of the everything to do with Israel and how tied in Israel is with its military and the IDF, how the populace is required to serve in the IDF. And you can't separate that from the horrors that you see, the tragedies that you see in Gaza. And so then, it's like, okay, well, cool. This software helped me, remove the background noise in my voice while I'm singing because the AC was too loud or whatever. But also that same software technology in some way, shape, or form is more likely than not being used by the IDF to clean up like audio recordings of Gazans as they're like massively surveilling and spying on the populace. And of course, the way that U.S. military and Israeli military kind of all of the interconnections between it, that's also probably being circled back around to our military and our mass surveillance of ourselves.
Exactly. It completely is. It's also the same training the IDF engages in, is ICE, is law
Yep.
enforcement, is police. It's all connected. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
one
the
and the
connections
same.
between our law enforcement training the IDF and stuff like that. And, I mean, there's a great
The
book. I have not read
surveillance.
it, but Jakarta Method, I very heavily like will recommend.
I heard
I'm
about this.
slacking on all the
Yeah.
books. Yeah, it's like, okay, if there's a standardized practice for how we go in and terrorize and decimate all these other countries around the world, and then we are imparting that onto other countries to then, further the same thing. It's like that's why you see like the way they tortured Greta Thunberg. You can see I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff now that she's out and been released, but they were on the peace aid flotilla and they were all kidnapped and they were tortured. They had her stripped naked and beaten and stuff like that. And it's like this is inhumane behavior. And the further we go towards AI and technology, we end up inherently distancing ourselves from our own sense of humanity and connectedness because we are so focused on connecting with the machines. And it's crazy. It's really crazy to think and process about that.
Right, and I think it's bringing people closer to these really deep philosophical questions, like existentialism almost, like what makes us human being? What actually separates us from technology?
Yeah, like what is the definition of a conscience, of sentience, of a soul, of a heart versus, like I've recently seen some of the, because I personally do not engage in using like Suno or AI generative music. I do not engage in any of that. But I recently
It's fucking
saw
trash.
no, okay, so here's the one thing I have to admit. It's actually pretty good. I saw on the recent version of the Suno, someone had showed me they like typed in a very basic prompt to AI generate some metal music because I'm very much so I love my metal screamo music, and I was blown away and shocked because if I hadn't known that it was like I'm sitting there right in front of you, have your phone out, and I can tell that it's Suno and AI generated. If you just played it to me blindly, I would not be able to tell the way the singing and screaming swaps off on certain parts of the lyrics, the way the instrumental has cuts and edits where the breakdowns are placed and all this stuff. I was genuinely terrified because it's like, oh, we're at a point now where AI artists. I think some of those links that I had placed in there are of some AI artists that are out there. People didn't know that, like, oh, this band I'm listening to that I really like their songs on is completely AI generated. And, Top Music Attorney and Rick Beato cover that stuff on their channel. And it's like, we're actually getting to the point where, like the AI just generated off rip test thing that my friend had done of a metal song is much better than any of the music I'll create. And that's a very and it's important to acknowledge that, like, yes, AI slop is a thing, and there's a lot of fucking garbage, disgusting AI that is just whatever. But there's also like some that is so good, so realistic, so it becomes disheartening to anyone that's an artist and a creative because you can make that in what 5-10 minutes, a quick little prompt, and you just wait for it to generate, and bam bam bam, you have a
Mm,
whole album. Versus, artists and creatives who are sitting there pouring their life's work onto writing a book, painting, drawing, making music and all that. And it's like it's inefficient. The hugest thing about art that makes it anti-capitalist in nature is that it is inefficient. The process of creation is
yes.
not to be commodified in such a sense that you should squeeze every bit of profit over every second of time spent on it. It is inherently organic, it is flawed, it takes time, it is, passion, it comes from the love in the heart. But then you hear an AI generated song and you don't even know it's AI generated, and you feel those same emotions and feelings with a song or a piece of art. And it's a very like trippy concept of like, Da Vinci had, any artist, in the past, Van Gogh, Da Vinci and all that, sure, they have mimics, they have people trying to steal their work and trying to copy them over time and stuff like that. But there's never been a sense of competition of like the same computer that I use, the same tools that I use, the same paintbrushes essentially that I use to create my art is now competing with me and is at a much higher caliber than I ever could be, because even if it is worse, people are willing to accept worse quality for the convenience of having it mass consumed, automated. You can regularly have it, generate this and that, whether it's a YouTube video or an album or an EP and stuff like that, and have it come out more consistently. If people are none the wiser, they're none the wiser.
Hmm. So how do you think that artists can economically stay afloat with, services like Spotify and Apple taking such a large percentage? Because it seems like if you're especially if you're an indie artist, forget if you're one of the big people like Taylor Swift or
Right.
something, you're kind of forced to participate in these predatory capitalist streaming services, right?
Yeah, and inherently, like, unless you are going to entirely exist on like Bandcamp and stuff like that, and only like make and distribute your own CDs and refuse to participate in the entirety of the streaming landscape, you're kind of screwed. At some point or another, you have to give in. And I feel like this idea of like, how can artists economically stay afloat with streaming services is like an inherently flawed question because it's a trick question.
Mm,
Even before it got this bad, artists don't stay afloat like just with streaming services. It comes down to a matter of diversifying. The largest percentages of like income for even some of the biggest
It's
artists
merch, right?
comes yeah, it comes from merch and touring, like live shows, merch, and stuff like sync deals as well. If you get your music onto a show or a movie, that's gonna do most for you in terms of long term income payoff for the amount of investment you are in making your art. But then it becomes a matter of like social media presence, teaching lessons, playing gigs, like doing cover band stuff and wedding stuff, session work. And it comes to the point where you have to be so diversified and wear so many different hats that you aren't just a musician or an artist or a painter. You're a social media presence, you're an influencer. You have to make TikToks, you have to make YouTubes. I
Hmm.
mean, recently, like, I've seen some stuff with certain bands on big labels where the labels will tell these bands like, hey, you have to start making TikToks. And like, we're 40 years old and we've like we're in our 40s and 50s, we've put out however many albums, we've been around for 20, 30 years on these labels and stuff like that. What do you mean we have to make TikToks? We're not fucking doing that. And it's like, nowadays, for like a label to want to scout you, they're not going to pick up some nobody off the street so much as they want to see, oh, you already have a million followers, oh, you can already put out content on your own. And so you have to like spread yourself so thin, being like, okay, well, I want to work on music today, but I also have to film these TikToks, I also have to do my own art and graphic design for this and that. I have to go, make all the TikToks, YouTubes, make sure I'm regularly posting to social media. And it becomes so overwhelming that at some
Yeah,
point or
that's like
another.
that's like 5 jobs that people get paid for.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly, like, you have to wear every possible hat. And at some point or another, it becomes so overwhelming that the temptation or just the inability to keep up without utilizing some unethical practices, like utilizing an AI, or people using like bots for fake streams and stuff like that, which inherently is fucking hilarious too, because Spotify uses like they you can't officially say this because they'll like come after you, but it's like very easy to like observe and prove. And if you read the terms and conditions, you watch some videos about that people like Ben Jordan and Top Music Attorney have gone over. As Spotify is AI generating their own music, and they're flooding it all the platform with it, so that they have to pay even less royalties. They get to avoid paying royalties overall because of how the streaming pool, like the business model, works. It's not just like you make 1,000 streams and you get $1 or anything like that. There's an overall pool of all the revenue generated, and that gets split up. And then, of course, labels have their back end deals to guarantee their artists receive higher percentages of that pool. And then on top of that, the Phono Records agreement was voted on and changed a while ago, the Phono Records 4, and that allowed for the royalties of things like podcasts and audiobooks that Spotify kind of has everything on their platform. They get to be part of that same pool. And so now, the they get to, after the fact, change their royalty percentages and pay even less on that. And then if they flood the platform with their own AI generated music and nobody cares because it's a background playlist they put on while they're like studying or cleaning and stuff like that, then they have to pay even less royalties because they're not paying it out to an artist. It's their own AI generated music with some kind of fake profile that's set up and stuff like that. It's very, I don't know, like it's I don't know. I'm very much so a pessimistic, negative Nancy kind of person. So anyone that has optimism and hope and continues fighting and keeps up with that, I very much so applaud them and respect them, because it is very easy to get overwhelmed with stuff like that. But for artists staying afloat, it's just a matter, you have to diversify, wear a million hats, do your 9 to 5, and on top of that, work 5 other jobs of your own stuff on top of it.
So
And
is
just, I guess,
this
drink a lot of coffee and stay awake all the time.
so my question for you then, is this just the new reality, or is this temporary? Because it doesn't at all seem sustainable.
Even if it is temporary, it is a new reality. Even if it is temporary, it 100% is a new reality. It is entirely also unsustainable as like a mass, as a as just the way of life for the entire creative industry globally. It very much so is unsustainable and a current reality. I'm hoping it's temporary, but like we've seen like Spotify has won out pretty much every single lawsuit against it, whether it's brought up by the MLC, for mechanical licensing, or it currently is also facing a lawsuit for jams, the remote play and the ability to like connect with a few people, and then we just play off a Bluetooth speaker. They queue up a song, I queue up a song, someone else queues up a song. That kind of stuff. That technology was, I believe, created by some college students, and they are currently facing a lawsuit over that.
And the problem with
And
lawsuits too is capitalism. Like it costs a
yeah,
fucking lot of money.
to be able to sue someone just to even get the lawsuit started and going. And then the ultimate reality is, and this is the founding principle of all of these AI current software, is that it's much easier for them to do whatever the hell they want with impunity, and then just they'll generate enough profit up front that whatever lawsuits come is just a slap in the wrist for them, and then they get to continue their business practice after they've gotten their investors and then flip their profit. They can easily pay off all the little fines, the small little fines here and there, and the lawsuits here and there, and they're still generating a profit, and they get to continue again with impunity with all of their unethical business practices.
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm sure it's even factored into the budget.
It is. It entirely is. Yes.
It's so fucking crazy. Like we it's weird. Like where do we even go from here? Because like I was saying, art and creativity and emotions and expression, those are all things that make us human beings. So
Right.
if those things continue to go away, where does where does humanity go? I mean, for lack of better words.
Uh, Ultimately, like the best and most idealistic kind of mentality to have on that is just whether you want it to be, the best way is a form of revolution, whether it is like all peaceful and intellectual versus like taking to the streets and setting everything on fire and burning everything to the ground. It is some form of revolution in the sense that, like, if the people push towards having legislation passed, and we have this legislation passed, then that kind of creates a little bit of breathing room. But ultimately, it if it comes down to a paradigm shift, the entirety of the capitalist business model is inherently cancerous in nature. This idea of like constant growth, of infinite growth, and just every chart pointing upwards all the time. It On a finite planet, infinite growth is it's literally the way cancer cells spread and kill living organisms.
Mhm.
And so there are ways to get towards sustainability, in terms of like current legislation that's being proposed, like the Living Wage for Musicians Act, which was to make sure that every streaming platform offers 1 cent per stream, which is, if you really think about it, kind of sad that we are all fighting, just to get 1 cent per a song played. But if that passes through, that immediately like shifts a lot of things, like Spotify owning the entire market share of music streaming and paying some of the least in royalties. That will force them to cough up the actual money that they owe these artists. And then there's another one, the Living Wage, and then the Music Fairness Act for terrestrial radio and stuff like that, to make sure that they pay royalties. You don't really ever get royalties off of radio plays. Sure, it gives you the widest reach and stuff like that, but they get to operate without having to pay any royalties. And their entire thing is advertisements. Every one or two songs, you hear like 20 ads before the next song, and you hear like the radio host talking and all that stuff. I'm
Mhm.
personally not a fan of the radio. You could not get me to listen to the
No.
radio. I will drive in silence before I listen to the radio, especially because my favorite radio station, 104.3 The Shark, that was the only place you could hear like Linkin Park or like 3 Days Grace, or Paramore and
Where
stuff
are
like
you
that
from
playing.
again?
I'm in Florida. I'm out
Okay.
here in South Florida. Yeah, Broward
Yeah, dude.
County.
I never listened to the radio.
Yeah, I just can't. I just can't. But that one recently got shut down, and it's now all sports. And I have nothing to do with sports. I can't tell you how a sports works, how any of those sports ball things works, or how a car works. I'm not a
Sports
sports
ball
person.
things. Yeah,
Yeah, no, all of that sports ball, keep it away from me. I don't know any of it,
that's funny.
But I was just like, oh, okay, cool. The one bit of good radio got replaced with fucking sports. Okay, I will drive in silence. I have a CD player and I listen to CDs in the car. If that if that's out, no, I will sit there and drive in silence. as opposed to listen to the radio. I'm not much of a fan of the radio, which is, I guess, kind of crazy for someone who's like music based to say that. But I have crazy takes all the time,
Well,
man.
it's not because most of it's not music. Most of it's advertisements.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, cool. They get to do all this advertisement and generate all this revenue, and they don't ever have to pay any royalties ever. It's like, okay, come on now.
Yeah, I wonder why you
Um,
don't like that as an artist.
yeah, exactly. The other thing is that shifts to the copyright law,
Mhm.
how copyright works, the DMCA, all that kind of stuff. Venus Theory and Ben Jordan and a few different top music attorney and stuff like that, they've covered this. There really needs to be a huge shift to it because right now, like, certain things like samples and loops technically can't have copyright, but they can. And then AI generated music, like, you can generate AI music to sound like an artist and then copyright claim the artist for sounding too much like the AI that was trained off that artist, which sounds like a fucking meme and a half, but it's an
What?
actual reality. Yeah. Yeah, that's Venus Theory, the specific video link that I put for that his video goes over that. Like, it was a test that he had done to see how far it goes. And there's a lot of things where there's no precedent, no lawyer can answer this, no court can really set precedents on these kinds of things. And so, like copyright only applies to human created stuff. So AI generated stuff currently cannot hold any copyright. But that being said, the current copyright laws, especially for things like sampling and interpolation, there's just too much of it that is outdated and is not gonna work for it. Doesn't work for a world of like computers and MacBooks and internet and Wi-Fi as we know today. It's certainly beyond outdated for anything to do with a realm of AI generation, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, internet, the whole new internet, Web 3.0, all these things. It's so inherently far behind that unless you really overhaul and just, again, it comes down to some form of revolution, whether you're going to sit there and fix every individual piece of like legislation, amendment, Supreme Court precedent, et cetera, or just burn it all down and just be like, okay, we're restarting the entirety of concept of copyright and stuff like that. Something needs to happen there. And I mean, recently we've seen, um, you know, countrywide revolutions about people like really taking the streets and having peaceful revolutions to take over. And it's funny because it comes from a lot from Gen Z, and technically I'm Gen Z. I fight with Gen Z and millennials all the time because I'm somewhere in between, and both don't claim me because I'm just not right for either. I don't know. Anyone born in that like specific, like, what is it, like 95 to like 2000 2001, it deals with that. But like the younger Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, I see that they tend to have a lot more like just off the rip, just awareness of things and more
Mhm.
willingness to change things. And so, when it comes to having hope and optimism, I kind of want to err on the side of being a little bit more positive and optimistic towards, these younger kids are really trying to like change things and start revolutions. We're lost on like boomers, Gen Xers that, they're kind of not gonna help fix these things as much as you'd
They're
hope.
Yeah, no, they've benefited too much from the system. They're
Exactly. The boomer
selfish
generation the
twats.
boomer generation literally, like, benefited from, like, every possible advantage they could and then turned around and removed accessibility to all of it. But,
Yeah, I mean, you're in Florida. I heard about the tax burden shit that's gonna start happening because
oh,
all the
yeah.
retirees are like, "Yeah, just fuck all the young people. We're gonna stop paying property taxes."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And considering that Florida right now, in terms of like rent is and cost of living, is like one of the highest in the country. It's getting up there in its competition. There are definitely certain parts of like Florida that are more expensive than California and New York. Even if it's not as a whole, there are like certain
Miami's
pockets.
crazy.
It is, and I try to avoid going there because I just don't want to deal with it. Forget just like the cost of living. The drivers are in Florida are fucking insane. To drive in the state of Florida, you have to have a certain level of insanity just naturally ingrained into your mentality. Like,
Were you born and raised there, or did you move
yeah,
there?
born and raised in Broward County, reporting for hood rat duty. Like, it's yeah, Florida's a hell of a place. It really is, and it's actually very terrifying at times. Yeah.
I've been there once. I did some humanitarian work for Hurricane Ian.
Oh, wow, okay, awesome, that's great, yeah, I mean, look, you see DeSantis right now, he's banning rainbow crosswalks because that's the issue that we need to focus on. The homelessness is on the rise. Everyone's getting evicted. The rent is constantly increasing, like back to back, year after year, tripling rent, buying out by the same few companies. New York real estate, Wall Street tycoons are buying out everything across the country.
The
It's
fucking private equity firms, dude.
Yeah, private equity and this I don't feel like they do anything good for anybody because I
No,
have watched private equity
they ruined
destroy
Joanne
everything.
Fabrics, man.
Oh my god, really? Oh, they've
Yeah.
they've ruined everything. They've ruined Skull Candies, Sweetwater, like all the top music gear things or brands. Just even again, like Skull Candy is like a consumer brand, and Sweetwater is a professional industry brand. Private equity bought out both of it. They're buying out things like Plug-in Alliance, Native Instruments, Isotope, combining them all under the same umbrella and replacing every bit of support, every bit, whether it's Google or Isotope, doesn't matter. It's all being replaced with an AI chatbot that does not understand like half the questions that you can just type into it.
Oh
And
my
he's like,
god,
how do I
AC.
speak to a human? How do I speak to a human that can help me? It
Dude,
doesn't exist anymore.
don't even get me started on AI-based customer service.
Oh, I find myself
It fucking
screaming.
pisses me off.
I've literally like I'm at a point I don't care. I will when I answer like or when I call and I get answer with a robot, I just scream, speak to a representative. I get to the point where I full on scream until I get to a person, and then I'm like, okay, thank God you're a human. Like, let me talk to you. Like, oh, please say, oh, you're not gonna understand me. Also, I speak like a Floridian, so when I say stuff like I don't even know what you're talking about, there's no way an AI chatbot is gonna understand what the hell I just said. So like it's
It's like, you need to pick a topic. Well, nothing relates to my question.
exactly. None of those relate. And it's like, okay, well, I'm here because I need to do this, this, and that. And none of those options are that. So, like, if you're going to set me an appointment, okay, maybe I can get by with that, but I will literally scream at you until you connect me to a person and be like, hi, can I get an appointment? Up until then, I'm like, speak to a representative. Like, it's,
Yeah,
it,
dude. I'm the
yeah,
same way, and this world is so frustrating
it very much so
because,
is.
like, you have to get on the phone because you're dealing with AI for something, like, to do with your healthcare insurance, which, healthcare insurance, why is that a thing?
Yeah, no, we just need universal healthcare. I mean, listen, if our taxes go to paying for Israel to have free education and free healthcare, why the hell can't we have it back here at home? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, of course.
ugh. But then it's like there are certain things now where it's like you actually, no matter how much you scream, speak to a representative, you will not get one. They that's part of those 10,000 jobs that they fired. You know what I mean? Like, Google firing some over 10,000, Microsoft firing, I think
Or, like,
over 10,000, stuff like that. Like, it's really bad.
I'm not sure if this is necessarily an AI development. It would make sense for it to be so, but I've noticed that the last few years there's way less bank branches too. Like you can't go in person into the bank as much.
Really interesting. I haven't noticed that as much.
At least with my particular bank, like US Bank, there's hardly any in California now. They've closed so many.
Wow. Okay. I've seen like a couple of them closing down, but I also haven't really paid much attention to that, and that's something I have to definitely look out for because it's like that's such an important thing. Like, access to your money, your financial everything.
Right, like
Whether
if
it's
I'm
your
applying for a loan to buy a house, like I'd rather talk to somebody.
yeah, as opposed to just an AI like just judging you and being like, yeah, no, you're not
Or
getting
even
one.
speaking to somebody on the phone, I'd rather, like,
Yeah,
speak to somebody in person and interact with them about, something that could potentially financially impact me for the next 30 years.
exactly. And one thing that I guess with all of this AI takeover is that like humans, I think inherently, but by the fact that we're like pack animals, a very like collective species inherently, I think it makes us more aware. That like in the early ages of technology when we were like, oh, a computer just got invented, oh, the iPhone just got invented and stuff like that, we were okay with like how much technology was taking over. But now that we're at this kind of point, I think the vast majority of people agree in that, like, oh, if I'm going to a bank, I don't want to speak to a fucking Tesla bot or an iRobot
No.
Will Smith movie type thing. I want to speak to a human, and I think it's forcing us to value overall human connection. Because me personally, I'm an introvert. I like to stay away from everyone and everything, and even in the club, I'll be just in the corner by myself. But
Hmm.
ultimately, even with such extreme levels of almost introversion and agoraphobia, like I cannot say at any point that I'd rather be surrounded with robots and rather talk to robots than humans. No, I need to like I become more aware of like how much more I need to just go out and be around people in a public setting, even if I'm not interacting with them, because that's humanity. That's us. You know, and I think that this level of like extreme AI takeover that we're pushing towards, at the very least, if nothing else, is making people aware of how like disconnected we've become from each other, and hopefully, at the very least, it pushes us in even if in the most subtle ways of our subconscious, to prefer to interact with people, even if it's on the smallest scale of like, okay, let me just like hold the door open for a human that's like a little bit further down, coming in, just to like, like I think
It
stuff like
takes
that.
That's what I see too, like individual
Yeah,
changes in behavior
yeah,
and rebellion against technology, because historically speaking, most generations rebel against previous ones. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe Alpha, maybe even younger Gen Z will just collectively mobilize themselves and be like, you know what, fuck this, we're not doing this anymore. One positive development I've seen too is a number of cities are striking down these data centers.
really.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
the
That's
people are getting
awesome.
really pissed about them because they're finding out what it's doing to their electric bills.
Yeah, the reason everyone's electricity bills has skyrocketed is because of all of this AI stuff, like the power consumption, and not necessarily just AI, but certain cloud services, like the amount of data centers we need to keep all these things running. And like if people are getting fed up with it and shutting them down, that's really the only way. Like, we can really like
Yeah, direct
rebel against
action,
that. Yeah,
and then
exactly.
getting into like, and they're showing up really pissed off to these town halls, um, shouting at their representatives and demanding answers to things like this. So, I mean,
Yeah, because
that goes far too in terms of political efficacy. Like, if people are pissed about things and know what's going on, it makes it a lot more difficult to be controlled and brought down this fascist rabbit hole.
yeah, and it also like it forces a level of accountability. It's like, okay, like where is all of my tax money going? What is happening here? Why is all this happening? At the very least, when you get someone to cough up the answer, they're like, oh, we're just doing some fascist shit with your money. Like we're just fucking you over. At some point or another, it forces people to face the reality of the situations they're in, but also it, very much so, not to throw the term woke out there, because I consider myself woke and I love that term, but it like forces you to like really sit there and realize that like, okay, like this is what's happening, at least, amongst all the people that get together with collective action and direct action, it can help focus them. Like me personally, like I pretty much have don't go to like McDonald's or Starbucks at all anymore because of the boycotts for Gaza. I will
Mhm.
say I did slack on the McDonald's when the Sonic toys came out, because I'm obsessed with Shadow the Hedgehog, and that was about it. I bought the toys and that was it. But I don't, I try to very much so to back what I stand in with my actions, and I think more or less a good majority of people are the same way. And so when they show up, to these town halls, to Congress, and they're demanding answers, and we finally get some level of, not, I don't want to say transparency. I don't ever want to say transparency when it comes to like what the government is doing, because MK Ultra is a thing that happened. You know what I mean? Like there's no level of like true transparency, but at some level of accountability helps to unify the people, because more often than not, I'm pretty sure the average person would agree that they would rather their tax money, go to like fixing the road that everyone knows down the street always has this huge pothole in it, and it will destroy your entire fucking alignment to go down this road if you're not paying attention, versus like, oh, this tax money just went to like dropping a bomb on someone and some celebrity put their signature on it to, support the cause or whatever. It's like, the vast majority of people, I feel like, even on sides that you would disagree with, you can more or less hopefully find some common ground when it comes to like, hey, instead of focusing on destruction, let's focus on creation.
Hmm.
And that's kind of, how you have to look at it, when it's like, okay, well, all of this is going towards that, but SNAP is getting cut, FEMA is being denied to certain states literally based on politics.
This
And it's like that.
is this is
it,
more or less how I approach conversations when people just make economic arguments, because it gets frustrating, right? When because I'm a leftist, so most of my arguments are based in humanity and values and egalitarianism, and not
right.
necessarily like, oh, we're going to be saving money. Like, some of the policies might be rooted in that, but that's not my main focus. My main focus is to serve people. And so
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it can get a little bit frustrating, but also you have to understand where people are at. So if somebody, like, for example, with the Trump administration comes to a conclusion where they're like, oh, he's bad for the economy, so I'm not going to be supporting him anymore. That's good, but that's not the reason why. That's like not my opinion. My opinion would be like, oh, he's tearing up the Constitution. He's a straight up fascist. But
Yeah,
either way, we're still coming to the same conclusion in a different way.
yeah. And I think I feel hopeful that I personally like try not to have like too many like Trumpy friends around me, but
Yeah,
in
fuck
Florida,
that.
like like good luck like not like being surrounded by Trumpies in Florida. You know what I mean? But I feel like I've noticed, and like as time goes on, as this year has gone on, I feel like I've definitely noticed a lot more people that on that side are like, man, what the fuck is happening? Like this isn't what I voted for. And it's like, sweetheart, yes, this is exactly what you voted for, but like thank you for like waking up and like let's actually talk about what's going on and all this stuff. And I'm starting to notice like even amongst like the hardcore Trumpies, some at this level of like distancing of like reality. Of course, then there are others that have just doubled down. They will double down and they will continue to triple down, quadruple down, quintuple down, and they will follow that up until the exact moment of like the last line of that poem. Fuck me, the name of it. Oh my god, you know what? When they came for poem, I believe it is. I'm pretty sure every like leftist knows this poem.
Yeah, I know what you're
Um,
talking about. I don't
yeah,
exactly
like
know it
I
word for word, but
yeah, I did not speak up when they came for it. Yeah, up until like they're knocking on your literal door, no matter how much you violently have supported all of this Trumpy stuff up until the end. Like there are people that will continue to quintuple down, and I think that's it's tragic, but it's also like you can't win them all kind of thing.
yeah, I mean
But I
they
mean, like,
deported the Latinos for Trump guy.
yeah, yeah, that, oh my god, the amount, okay, as a Floridian, the amount of like Latinos for Trump and Cubanos for Trump that I have seen that are like posting like, I voted for Trump, but I'm, oh, he's gonna deport my family and all that, but I thought I was good. And it's like, buddy, like what do you want me to say? Like how much empathy can I have for you when we all tried to like warn you of things? It comes down to things like Charlie Kirk and all that, when he has a statement like he doesn't believe in empathy. Okay, then watch me not have empathy for your dead corpse bleeding on the ground.
And
Like
that's
if
what it
you
comes down to, because so I'm white, but I've had conversations with Latinos about people that have right-wing views towards immigration. And basically it comes down to I did it the right way. I had these circumstances, so things worked
yeah.
out for me. So why don't they just do the same thing? It's a lack of empathy, it's a lack of perspective.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of like you'll see like the extreme sides of leftism and rightism. The extreme side of leftist ideology comes down to this level of empathy of like, let me help as many people as possible, and the extreme end of right wing is, as we've seen historically, literally fascism, Nazism, genocides. And it's like, okay, like I don't know how to spell it out any more clearer, but
One
like
side wants to give you healthcare, the other side wants you dead, but they're basically equally as bad.
yeah, it's I, I don't know, like it
Keep 'em in the
becomes
middle.
satirical to like try to talk to people at a certain point that are like so locked in on that side. It's like, okay, sure, your economy is great, but your entire population has starved, homeless, and is experiencing a genocide. Okay, um common sense a little bit, maybe not. But I mean, when it comes down to like circling back to art and stuff like that,
Mhm.
art has a huge like tremendous impact in like becoming in touch with that sense of humanity, that sense of connection, and specifically just going towards like the fascist side of things and genocide and all that. When it comes to, because I guess I feel like I didn't touch on this enough, but art has been like really tremendous recently in spreading awareness for Gaza. Like the amount of artists that I have seen like that are sharing support is crazy. Like, Bring Me the Horizon, Guns N' Roses, The Used, Kneecap, Miss Rachel, Olivia Rodrigo. These are just a few of the people that have like shown their support and all that, and you'll see them waving their flags. Ultimately, like it's like if nothing gets done besides people on a stage waving a flag, we kind of don't win there. But like you, like I've seen, like again, this it's been over 2 years at this point that like this recent conflict, which is just a small proportion of the larger issue of all the decades of history. But the amount of like wide support, like really, like Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses, like Axl is out there waving a flag. Like I've never before in any point of like being live and seeing stuff like that, seeing musicians on stage and political purposes in the arts, have I seen like that high level of a celebrity taking a political stance like that. So I feel like, like things get to a point where it's a matter of like, like, I don't even know how to phrase it, but it's like it's getting to the point of awareness that
It's
like it's
just mainstream views.
yeah.
It's not like I'm just raising attention to an issue. I mean, I am, but it's like this is just humanity. It's like almost the equivalent of somebody advocating for clean water. It's just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
this is the world that we should all strive for.
Yeah, and art I feel like has like a huge burden on this, in the sense that like it's always had a place in the realms of protest and politics. When you see urban art or like graffiti in like the undergrounds or war torn areas and stuff like that, it's poetry and books and writing that's whether it's like you want to talk about like the Communist Manifesto or a book like Persepolis, or music, like anti-war music. There was a lot of great Vietnam protest war music, stuff like that. You see even stuff like Rage Against the Machine, Modern Times, Rise Against, stuff like that. It's
Yeah,
like
post 9/11, Green Day.
exactly the entirety of like System of a Down's catalog and stuff like that. It's like it's passed down from generation, and it bears the biggest burden in spreading that awareness, because that art is inherently interconnected. It's something that every human can relate to, because capitalism and automation, they're inherently inorganic, inhuman, the nature of their existence and definition. But the role of art as a form of creation is a defining characteristic of humanity and organic nature and imperfection that intrinsically aligns like art as the antithesis to the former. uh, Even non-political art is combative to capitalism and automation by nature of the fact that it's creation at the hands of a human. Social media, stare at screens, kind of dominated world of modern dystopian times, art is the most natural form of spreading that awareness of these issues and of combating capitalism, because art is the most accessible it has ever been. And, you know, it has the most desire to be consumed. Everyone wants to be staring at a screen all the time. I will fully admit that I am addicted to my phone. I'm checking my phone 20 times in a second to see what the time is. And, like I'll check my phone 3 times in a minute. What time is it? And after the third time, I still didn't even look at the time and I don't know what time it is. Like we're very much so in that stare at a screen, doom scroll through TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts, whatever it is. And so that means that we are in the point where art is the most desired to be consumed, whether you're binging the latest show on Netflix or HBO or whatever it may be. It's the most desired to be consumed, and it is the most accessible. There's so many tools, both free and paid. The processing power of the average computer to enable someone to sit there and learn how to edit a video, how to write a song and stuff like that without even the use of AI, just actually sitting there and learn. It's the most accessible it's been. But then you add on the level of AI of that anyone can create any kind of song or art. It hopefully empowers people to create art. Even like I'll it's kind of hard to say like whether like this is a question I guess I could post off to you, but whether you value an AI generated piece of protest art against like the fascist regimes to be more valuable than, you know naturally human created art that is in, in the mainstream sense of like pushing the current agendas. You know what I mean? Like some right wing human made music
More
versus
status quo.
yeah, exactly. And it's like these that's like a philosophical question that we'll never have like a right answer to, but that's something we have to think about nowadays in the world that we're in. So I don't know if you have any takes on which one would you would prefer. Does a humanity win out over the AI in that specific kind of a case?
I think humanity ultimately would. It's hard to envision for me some sort of technocracy um,
Right, right.
setting foot and leading humanity into the right direction for creating art. Like that doesn't even make any sense to me. Another thing that I was thinking about too, and I've thought about actually a lot recently. So
Hmm.
the whole concept of artist colonies, like they've existed for decades, right? Like places like Aspen, places like I don't know, Sausalito near San Francisco, or Carmel,
Hmm.
Laguna Beach. These are all places that are so-called artist colonies that have these very high-end galleries. Yet, it's millions of dollars to live there. So it's
Is that not
hyper.
just money laundering from some rich billionaires?
Yeah,
I
it totally is. I've always thought art galleries were like that, but it's like
That's how I
these
feel about Art
places are
Basel here in Florida. Like
they're
she's
promoting
100%.
themselves as places where artists can go as a place to get away and a haven, but you have to be a multimillionaire to live there. So it's so stupid. Because if you think about this from a historical perspective,
Hmm.
it was not always like that at all. So like Aspen, for example, um, in the 50s and 60s was the place where the beatniks would go and the hippies. Matter of fact, that's how John Denver became really famous, and he had a place there. And it was really full of artists, and it was not this like this luxurious ski resort where you have
Right.
billionaires come in on helicopters and shit. It's
It was far more bohemian and urban. Yeah.
and that's just magnified over and over again around the world because of capitalism and because of the separation of wealth and really generational wealth.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's more common now, like since everyone's kind of like used to like having like 30 roommates just to survive in like a two-bedroom apartment and stuff like that. I feel like at the very least, and I've seen a little bit of it here and there, of like more or less like not necessarily like a whole situation like that, but like a house here or there where a few people or an apartment studio complex, something like that, where people kind of get together and kind of all live together, starving artists, la boheme rent style kind of, to have their little mini communes in a sense. And I feel like that's far more realistic and sustainable for a mass populace of like, hey, like, the all the artists in this city kind of know this one area, this one, block of houses or wherever, where they kind of all just like live and hang out, or just like there's this one nice house that a good 4 or 5 people live in, but multiply that a few times over, and it's all focused on arts, whether it's music production or physical art like painting and sculpting and stuff like that, where you can have these little thing. I feel like that's closer to a realistic answer for everybody, as opposed to just like, hey, everybody cough up $1 million to go to this little artist resort kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it's
That makes
like
a
like
lot more sense what you said.
yeah, yeah. It's like okay, sure, you can have that like rich little bougie bullshit over there, but in terms of like applying that same idea and design philosophy of a getaway kind of thing like that to a mass populace, you're you're far more likely to be able to get like you know 10 people to like put down for like a house, and then get like 20 people to buy two other houses or whatever, and like just have like these three houses in the middle of wherever the fuck they can afford, to set up a little like, okay, this is a three house little commune of like all types of artists and people to be welcome. And I feel like that would be a far more realistic answer than to like democratize the super rich bougie stuff. Like that comes down to a far more grassroots approach of like artists getting to know each other, meet each other, direct action, crowdfunding themselves and setting up stuff entirely themselves, than like, all this Art Basel stuff kind of down here where it's like this is very clearly like rich people playing money laundering for fun. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I don't think there's any other way of looking at it.
Yeah. In terms of like what I envision and hope for in the future with especially the stuff like music and art creation, it's really funny because there was a song, I don't know if you know it, is very, I guess, popular in 2012. Skrillex, obviously was popping off and making his music and all that. One of
Dude,
the
that
songs I
was
think
one of the best summers for EDM. I was in high school then.
yeah, yeah, I was just about to start high school around that time. Yeah, and the song "Breaking a Sweat," it had the Doors featuring on it, but there's a sample in that song. There's like a whole like bridge section or outro section or whatever, and it's got the interview from like 1969 with Jim Morrison. He was talking about how he envisioned the future of making music, and it was like one person surrounded by like a bunch of machines and tapes and electronics and all that. And that was his vision for the future. And then you see, like how Dead Mouse's studio, whenever he does like live streams and all that,
Yeah.
or people like Cell Dweller, where it's like they literally are surrounded by 20 million machines and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But we've progressed past that point such that like it's not even like one person with a million machines and electronics. It's really just like you can have one person with one machine, provided there's like in any room anywhere, provided there's an electrical outlet, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
That they can kind of you can create hit records globally inside of a bedroom, you know what I mean? And we're getting to the point with music and art and all that, it can be entirely AI generated. Like instead of we'll have like music made by machines for machines and humans, with how much bots and fake streams are a problem, instead of music made by humans with machines for humans. And it's like, unless we act now quickly and decisively, but also carefully and with consideration, we're going to actively pass all the points of no return in technological standpoints and humanitarian, climate change, protect the earth standpoints. And it's like the few rich billionaire ruling class in charge, they want to charge ahead and directly go straight towards the Terminator and the Matrix as long as they get their profit margins. And the vast majority of the proletariat masses are allowing this for the sake of culture wars and convenience, and just not being focused on the right areas of what to change and focus on and fight in society. But at the same time, like there's still hope. Like I've seen more and more bands are
Sure.
coming back. Korn announced that their next album, they're doing everything like analog and on tape. And so that as a form of like rebellion against this like overly like technologically induced psychosis of society. Um, I'm hoping that like it's a matter of just holding on and pushing through. Like hopefully, again, I respect anyone that has like positive and optimistic outlooks. I am super like trying to like let go of my extreme negativity of like the world's fucked all the time, but
It's a
I'm
pendulum swing for me, man, between
yeah,
optimism and pessimism.
you know
I
what,
have to
that's
be
good, that's
I have to be
healthy.
positive about things, because like, fuck, the other day, I got into a conversation with a comrade, and she was just being incredibly negative about Mondani, and this is a whole separate
Oh really?
topic, but just, like, we were talking about nuance and material conditions, the reality of
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
and a whole bunch of different topics. And it just, by the end of it, I just felt so shitty because she was just throwing so much negativity at me. And I'm like, you know what? I need to have some hope for people that some people's lives will get better because of this. And so
Yeah,
just
it's
like,
important to hold on to that hope because it, we're at a time where it's so important to hold on to that and let that light a fire under you to have a drive, whether it's like to create more content, whether it's like art or poetry, or to be more actively protesting and hitting the streets and all that with peaceful protests or whatever form of protest you might participate in. And I don't want to actively incite violence for not getting sued reasons, but like like in terms of like where it comes to certain beliefs, it's like uh eh, hopefully certain like seeing the world today. I mean, fucking the CEO of Suno says on record, he said this in an interview where it's like, you've created this AI platform that generates music that to the point where people cannot tell it's AI generated or not. And he says most musicians don't actually enjoy creating music. And
what?
every single musician heard that clip and went, "What the fuck did you just say?" You know what I mean? And so hopefully like stuff like that lights a fire under people to go out there and like really
Dude,
pursue every form of like humanitarianism that there is. Anything that makes and clearly defines you as a human, whether it's protest, whether it's art, whether it's I don't know, the costumes, design, makeup, whatever it may be, like to pursue like the true authenticity of just every aspect of human creative expression, to rebel against that technological stagnation of like ideology, of thought, of like philosophical questions and quandaries that we may have as a species and as an individual.
really well said. I agree with everything there. Um,
Thank you.
quite articulate in general.
Thank you. It takes
Um,
me a lot to be like that because I talk with like a lot of slang all the time, and I'm trying to remain composed, for the sake of like having an intelligent intellectual discussion, while also not coughing up my lungs because I am a tad bit under the weather right now.
you don't sound like you're sick, so appreciate
Oh,
you
thank you.
going up on the
Yeah,
show.
I'm getting back over just coughing on my lungs. I made sure to like get a good amount of snot and mucus out of me before we started recording, so that it'd be good for this.
Well, do you have anything before we?
Oh, I'm sorry. You cut off there. What was that?
Whoops, my microphone got unplugged. Sorry about that.
Oh, good. No worries.
I said, did you have anything else that you wanted to wrap up with?
In terms, I guess, for everyone, just I guess show their support for whatever they can in terms of like the Music Fairness Act, the Living Wage for Musicians Act, stuff like any form of like local politics you can get into, any form of like showing up to your town halls, anything to really show your support for humanity, your opposition to fascism and AI and stuff like that. Please go forth, look for it. If you want me, I can plug my stuff. I'm Sad Boy Music, 5adb0i, 5adb0imusic, all platforms. You can follow me on Instagram, listen to my music, stuff like that. I will hopefully be putting out more music soon. I try to post YouTube videos, stuff like
As long as
that.
you're not replaced
Um,
entirely.
uh, Listen, if I get replaced by AI, probably there'll be things put out more frequently, and because I'm not gonna lie, I sit there and I'll be slacking sometimes. I'll be slacking on
Dude,
being,
tell me about it. I don't like editing podcasts.
but sorry. Yeah, that's about it. I try my best to be woke and leftist all the time, and I appreciate you so much for having me out here on a podcast. I've never done it before, but I'm glad to be able to talk about these issues facing all of us. And if you like me being super woke and communist and
Fuck
screaming
yeah.
about like we need revolution, go ahead, follow me, check me out.
Clipped right there.
Of
Yeah, I really appreciate your time, man. Thanks again. If
course,
you
thank
have
you so
anything
much.
else that you want to bring up on the show, you're always welcome to come back.
Okay, yeah, awesome. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about all different kinds of topics. I know I put out like 20 million links and like typed out so much, and then we kind of, there's a few different things that we didn't really have a chance to like really touch on in depth. But like, yeah, I would love to like talk again sometime and go more at length about other aspects of these same issues.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Well, have a good rest of your day, man. Um, as always, the 805 Uncensored is on all the major podcasting and social media platforms. If you have any comments, questions, guest suggestions, it's a hard word for me to say right now. You
All
can
good.
email us at 805uncensored@gmail.com or DM us on social media. I'm most often on Instagram. We would love to hear from you. Um, as always, wherever you're listening in the world, stay safe out there. Free Palestine. The revolution is you. And check out Sad Boy Music. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.